Okay, so welcome to the Chatterbug Speech and Language Therapy Information Day. So just to let you know, like I said, the information day is being recorded. If there is a question or if you just want some more clarification, we've got a question and answer session at the end, or as well, feel free to use that raise your hand button, and that's absolutely fine. Alternatively, put your questions or comments into the Google chat panel and I can look at it in between or at the end. It'll be really helpful if you can mute your microphones, just so there's no interference and everybody can hear. And then feel free to kind of interact or kind of participate as we go along. That'd be really nice. And then at the end of the session, I'll be sending you a feedback form. It won't take very long, just so we can get some information of how you found the session, so we know if we need to make any improvements for any further informations that we may do in the future. Okay, so let's get started. So in the information day, we'll be covering a little bit about Chatterbug, who we are, what is speech and language communication needs, what is a speech and language therapist, how do you become a speech and language therapist, and what your role will be. Importantly, especially now COVID, a lot of services, private and the NHS, are offering telehealth services. So to give you a bit more information about that, the role that students play within Chatterbug and the training, and then our question and answer session towards the end. So you may or may not be familiar with Chatterbug. So Chatterbug is a social enterprise with a headquarters in Leeds, and we work with a range of schools and families across the UK. So regardless of our headquarters being in Leeds, we are a nationwide service. So we were first established in 2008 after recognising that the lack of speech and language therapy available for children, especially those from socially deprived or less privileged backgrounds, was very limited. Since then, as you can see, we've grown massively. So at the minute, we are a team of 54 members of staff, from speech therapy assistants, speech therapists, business staff, admin staff, and so on, across 4 main locations, which you can see towards the map on the right-hand side. So our new exciting venture is at the minute that we are expanding into Knowsley, following the NHS contract win. So that's really exciting for Chatterbug. We are commissioned by over 130 schools across Leeds, Leicester, Nottingham, Scarborough, and Liverpool. So that means that's the private service. So a speech language therapy assistant or a speech language therapist will go into a school that might be daily, once a week, once a fortnight, once a month. It just depends on the input that the school would like. And we work with a range of children depending on if it's a nursery, primary school, secondary school, so on. We are meeting our 4-week wait time for initial assessments in Halton. So Halton is our NHS commission service, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. We've got stronger cross-site links and relationships, and we have our in-house marketing team who runs our social media, and recently we've rebranded, and that's played a part in that as well. So being a national organisation with a large kind of employees, Chatterbug has their own set of values as the Chatterbug Constitution, and we feel for this reason, this is why our clients choose us. So we recognise ourselves to be open, connected, showing fortitude, and being dependable. And by that we mean we're open because we're passionate about continuing self-development. So we don't feel like, okay, we've been to uni, we've trained, we've got our degree, and the learning stops there. Absolutely not. We're always learning, whether that's through our CPD days that we have once a term, whether that's our own self-directed learning we do outside of work. So the idea is that we're constantly evolving and learning new things to make sure that we're doing the highest level of evidence-based practice within our therapy input with the children, schools, and families we work with. We celebrate diversity and open to change and new ideas. We're connected because we work closely with our clients and colleagues, and we have a culture of contribution, commitment, and responsibility to others, and therefore we are proud of the work that we do and the community that we have been a part of. We show fortitude by looking at challenges as an opportunity rather than a barrier, and we take those opportunities and challenges as a way to learn and to develop ourselves as well as a service. And we accept responsibility from mistakes and are not afraid to ask for help when needed. We're dependable because we create a positive and comfortable atmosphere in which both colleagues and clients can feel safe and understood and supported, and we listen to the needs of others and do what is promised. And hopefully, as I go through the slides, you will see how we actually do deliver these data on a day-to-day basis. So now I'm going to show you a couple of speech and language therapists, just to give you a little bit more of their background information of how they came into speech and language therapy, and what their journey was. If I start off with one of our therapists, Renata. So I'll just read what she said. So she always thought she was going to be a dentist. I knew I wanted to work with children in a field that involved medical science and in a one-to-one setting. I initially started out my degree to become a dentist, but it didn't feel right for me. And then became interested in speech therapy after my grandfather suffered a stroke, and I got to see him work with his speech therapist as part of his rehab process. I was able to switch my degree and really fell in love with the profession. So she started off going into dentistry and then kind of saw, after her grandfather worked with a speech therapist, that that's what she wanted to do. And then we have another therapist, Annabelle. So Annabelle said that she became interested in becoming a speech language therapist during her final year in sixth form, so college. She knew she wanted to do something that involved biology and working with people. I scrolled through hundreds of degree options on UCAS, but I always came back to speech and language therapy. I was able to get some work experience with an independent speech and language therapist near my hometown, and I absolutely loved it. I didn't get the grades to apply to a speech language therapy degree initially, so I started biomedical science at Leeds Beckett, which really helped with the medical science module, before applying internally for speech and language therapy degree. I qualified in 2018 and have been at Chatterbug since. So those, you can see the two therapists who kind of came into speech and language therapy a very different way, but regardless of their kind of prior education or the prior experience, it all kind of helped them to either apply for the speech and language degree or to succeed in the speech and language degree at university. So what is SLCN, or speech and language and communication needs? So it's a broad term, generally as an umbrella term, to kind of describe a range of difficulties that is associated with speech, language, or communication, or all of them together. So speech, language, and communication are essential skills that helps us, both children and adults, to express our needs, worries, thoughts and feelings, and form relationship with others. So for example, if you've not got great speech skills, your speech sounds might be a bit impaired, you're going to struggle to be understood by others. If you're, for example, your expressive language skills, so you might have a lack of vocabulary, that might kind of reduce your participation or your ability to kind of extend your sentences and embark in a full length conversation, or just your communication. So you might not have the confidence or the vocabulary around to initiate or to request a social within a social interaction or within a social context. So it's important to remember that no child with speech and language needs presents in the same way. So it's important to access their individual difficulties and the impact it's having on their daily life. So looking at the functional impact. So yes, they've got this difficulty with their speech and language needs, but what is the physical or the functional impact that it's having on their daily life? What is it restricting them to do? And that is where the role of the speech and language therapist would come in. So what does it look like day-to-day life? So if we start off with speech, so the difficulties might be dyspraxia, it might be articulation or phonological needs, and a child with those difficulties may find it difficult to select and use the appropriate sounds in their speech, and therefore making themselves understood by others will be difficult. Communication, those difficulties might be autism, social communication, so social, emotional, mental health needs, so like attachment disorder, and a child may find it difficult to initiate, request, or reject. They might find it difficult to ask and answer questions, so they might struggle in that social social contexts, and difficulty forming relationships or friendships with others. Language needs might be developmental language disorder, commonly known as DLD, learning difficulties, and therefore a child may demonstrate poor understanding of instructions or poor following instructions in the class, difficulty producing accurate sentences, and therefore unable to use appropriate vocabulary. So we know speech and language needs is widespread and it's quite common. So according to the Communication Trust, in some areas, up to 50% of children may present with SLCN when starting school. Although many children catch up, others may be at higher risk of persistent difficulties, and therefore the gap between their peers just extends as they go through Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, and so on. For example, children with diagnosis associated with speech and language needs are a high risk of persistent speech and language needs. For example, DLD, autism, dyspraxia, learning difficulties. So, what is the role of the SLT? So, the speech and language therapist provides essential support and care for people with speech and language communication needs. They also provide support and care for those with difficulties around eating and drinking, and therefore the care that is provided by a speech and language therapist is definitely unique. So, a speech and language therapist is involved throughout a child or a patient's journey in respects to assessment, review, implementing therapy, supporting families or teachers, providing diagnosis, training and upskilling others. So a speech language therapist has a wide scope of practice, and it's important to have knowledge of physiology, psychology, and linguistics. So the therapist role would be to assess what's going on essentially. What is the difficulty? Is it with the speech? Is it the language? Is it the communication? Or is it a bit of everything? Based on that, do we need to train staff? Do we need to train parents? Do we need to implement targets? Do we need to then review after we've implemented those targets? Do we need to support different professionals or families to implement those targets or to understand a diagnosis? And essentially upskilling others to make sure that that child is both supported, not just at home or not just at school, but in both contexts, to make sure progress can be the maximum amount that child can make. Therefore, it's essential that a speech and language therapist has sound knowledge in all of those areas. Okay, so how to become a speech and language therapist. So we've talked about what is speech and language therapy, what does a speech and language therapist do, but how do we actually get there? So coming back to Annabelle, so Annabelle completed a 3-year undergraduate degree at Leeds Beckett University. So the course that she studied included both adult and paediatric speech and language therapy, and you'll find that most courses do. So once you do graduate, it then will give you the options and the opportunities to either venture out into the adult population or to work with paediatrics. Her course involved a wide range of modules, including phonetics, linguistics, voice, and medical science. Placements organised by the university were both adult and paediatric placements, so she was able to get a wide range of experience. So Annabelle said, I started as a part-time trainee SLT at Chatterbug in March 2018, prior to graduating. I graduated in July 2018 and started at Chatterbug full-time in September. Once I started working as a newly qualified practitioner, NQP, I started working on my NQP goals or the NQP competency framework, and she is now a certified practitioner. So she's completed and achieved her NQP competencies, and she's a fully qualified trained SLT, and she's currently working within Chatterbug as well. If we look at Renata had a slightly different journey. So she completed a 4-year undergraduate degree in USA in Texas. She then completed a 2-year master's degree in Texas as well. And her course involved very similar modules to the UK. So she still studied phonetics, linguistics, voice, medical science. But the main difference for her was that she studied audiology within her undergraduate degree as well. So Renata started working in Texas, working within sort of early childhood intervention, so still paediatrics, mainly under the age of 3. So Renata said, similar to the NQP goals in the UK, the US has a clinical fellowship year, CFY, which takes about 9 to 12 months to complete. I moved to the UK in October 2019 and was able to transfer my license and qualifications thanks to the mutual recognition agreement between the RCSLT and the ASHA, the American Hearing Speech Language Association, and started working at Chatterbug full-time in January 2020. So she studied in USA, made the transition with the help of the RCSLT, which is the governing body within the UK for speech language therapists, and then she's been with us since last January. Okay, so what does my role involve? So as a speech language therapist, my job involves planning, developing and delivering speech language therapy to children, young people in our private clinic and schools. So I get to do a bit of everything. So I get to do the assessment, I get to plan the therapy, I get to develop it, and then I get to deliver it as well as train staff as well. So some of the responsibilities include providing formal and informal assessments, so completing them, administrating them, assessing them, providing specialist therapy, developing and providing targeted support, for example, therapy programs, therapy plans, training and upskilling staff and parents, managing caseloads and prioritizing caseloads and children, writing professional reports, whether that's just a summary or an assessment report, whether that's a EHCP, Education Healthcare Plan report, lots of various reports that you may need to write, as well as working as a part of an MD team, a multidisciplinary team, and that might be with school staff, it might be with parents, or it might be with other professionals such as a paediatrician, education psychologist, audiologist, and so on. So for a therapist working at Chatterbug in Leeds would look something like this. So from 9 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so a typical school day, we would be working in our schools. So it's a school-based setting, so that's our traded service. So the schools buy in the Chatterbug support, so it's something that's funded by the school. And the role of the therapist within the school would be to provide assessments, reviews, and therapy sessions for students. So, like I said, we then do it all. They would manage and prioritize the school caseload, usually in conjunction with the SENCO at the school, provide support for school staff and parents, build a close relationship with the school SENCO, so working closely together, as well as the class teachers, teaching assistants, and sometimes parents as well. So that's what you would do within your 9 to 3 time. So you'd work with the children, doing lots of different kind of assessments and therapy, group therapy, one-to-one therapy, meetings as well. And then from your 3 to 5 is what we call our office time. So you would come back to the office, you wouldn't be at school anymore. And either you might be, between that time, you might be kind of attending internal training. So within Chatterbug, you might be doing some Chatterbug projects. You might be working in the private clinic, providing speech and language input to private clients. So those are your typical, our private speech therapy. So you would have your own children after school as well, usually one-to-one. You might be working on developing your Chatterbug core skills through our training program, and that is also 3 to 5 time is for your peer support, your clinical supervision groups, your reflection, your line management. So those are some of the things that might be going on at 3 to 5. Whereas a day in Halton at Chatterbug might look a little bit different. So Halton is our free NHS service, so it runs quite differently. So whereas where I said in Leeds, it's the traded service, so the schools buy in the support. At Halton, it's just your NHS. It's very much school and clinic based. We have a dysphagia clinic and specialist SLTs, and specialist provisions are provided. So that might be a mix. So the therapist might be in a school in the morning, or they might be in the clinic in the afternoon. And those sessions might run slightly later than kind of your typical 9 to 3 in Leeds. Okay, coming over to our telehealth service. So Chatterbug's telehealth service kind of kind of developed since COVID, and it's been really positive and it's worked really well, and we've had lots of positive feedback both from schools and parents of how well it's worked. So since kind of after the pandemic or after the lockdowns, we've continued with it, and we decided to keep telehealth to our day-to-day session delivery. So now it's become a part of our service delivery. So some of the positives about telehealth were that we managed to increase parental engagement, and I can't tell you how amazing it was for parents to actually sit in on the sessions, to actually see the progress that the children make, to actually observe and what the therapist is doing, and then carry over the activities at home. That aspect was brilliant. And then because of that, the therapists were then able to upskill and support parents because they were actively present in the sessions, whereas if we were at a school, parents are not always there. We had opportunities to see the child in a different setting and how the child presents when they're at home. Distance wasn't an issue because we were able to access clients further away, so that expanded our kind of national reach, international in some cases as well. We developed flexible and creative resources. We couldn't use our speech language kits that we had in the back of our cars. We had to kind of get creative and develop new resources, and that worked brilliantly. To an extent, we had more time available, so we were able to see more children, or we were able to work on some of the other school activities that you might not always be able to do if telehealth wasn't here. And it enabled cross-site working, so we were able to kind of liaise and speak with therapists, for example, in Leicester and Halton, who might not necessarily physically see each other in the office due to the distance. So that was really great in terms of kind of developing therapists' kind of skills as well, and upskilling our own staff. So like I said at the start, speech language therapy students are a big part within Chatterbug. So usually throughout the academic year, we do have a lot of students, both undergraduate and postgraduate students, on placement with us at Chatterbug. And we are currently working with a number of universities to make sure we can provide a mix of face-to-face and a virtual placement. And we've had it like that a couple of times since COVID, and it's worked really well. And both students and university educators have commented that it has worked well. So some of the universities that we've worked with so far: Sheffield, Leeds, Beckett, Manchester Met, University of Manchester, Edinburgh, and Birmingham City. So as well as placements, we are setting up student projects a few times in the year, separate to placements. So that's something completely different. So students would have to apply for it on their own without the uni. So it's something completely different to the placements that you have to do as part of the degree. Our most recent project was during lockdown, so last year, and we had 2 students working with us 2 days a week, in which they learnt the admin process, and in terms of like calling parents, booking appointments, and they were able to really develop their skills in liaising with parents and having those kind of having those conversations over the phones, and also modelling care plans, so looking at children's targets and then modelling them to parents and talking them through it, so training them. And student feedback during the project, students reported that the project increased their confidence in talking to parents. They found it useful to see the whole process of booking clients and then seeing them for a session. So it just gave them a lot of kind of background knowledge and information about what kind of goes on behind the scenes. Training. So Chatterbug also develops and delivers in-house programs that are unique to Chatterbug. So they've been developed by specialist speech language therapists who are experts in the field of education, and we run them several times throughout the year. And I'll show you a list of some upcoming trainings programs that we have that are virtual. So if you are interested, you could sign up to some of those. Okay, what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to show you some testimonial videos of some from parents and some from teachers for them to talk about their experience with speech and language and Chatterbug.
I don't know, it's awkward, isn't it, almost? because everyone wants the child to be normal and to have a normal speech language, be a normal child, and obviously with either not speaking or not understanding language as a 2 or 3 year old should, it brought with complications and frustration.
Well, I think the first thing was she had to assess the child, my children, both of them,
establish the needs.
to establish what the needs were, because obviously every child's going to need an individual programme. It's not just one fits all, is it? So she spent a lot of time getting to know, and also building up relationships, which is said to me, and I agree with her, that this is important when working with children. If you want to get the best from them, you need to have a relationship with them. And so she spent a lot of time to start with, which was like hidden things, like, so she would be playing with them but also observing them at the same time, so getting to know them and their needs through play. Isaac didn't really get concepts, so he wouldn't get like underneath or next to or on top of, those kind of things, which most children would just naturally develop the understanding to. Isaac he doesn't learn in that way, he's got to be specifically taught something. So she would go away and do that. And then like the school would then agree, like the last time they assessed him and looked at him, it was concepts. But then when we put the programme in place, he's mastered it and it's fine. Whereas Imogen, hers is, well, to start with was getting her speaking full stop. But her understanding is fine, and so she's probably learned speech, an understanding of speech as any other child would, but she just can't get it out. And start with Makaton, and I was really not wanting to do it. When Asma said, I think we need to start with Makaton and signs, because she was so severely not speaking. I was really upset. My background is working with learning disabilities and mental health services, and so I'm thinking, I'm going to have this lifelong problem where my child's only going to be able to sign or have to use an iPad or something to speak, and I really struggled with that, really found it difficult. And Asma's like, no, you don't get it. Once she's got the signs, the words come, and I was like really apprehensive, because my experience is people who use signs, and that's probably just like a bit of tunnel vision, but that was my experience. And Asma was just like, no, let's give it a try. And even now her speech therapy includes, we're trying to get her pronunciation, because she knows what she wants to say, but her clarity's not always there. That's where we're at now. So if she was here, there's been massive progress, and she's loads of speech, but the pronunciation is still struggling. So there's often signs like Fleur can't even do it. There's like a lollipop involved, there's like signs for it anyway. And just by doing that, she now can say it, the Frit and Fleur, like she struggled with before. And I think that's great, because now I've got 2 children that speak, whereas a few years ago I had 2 children that didn't. And so everything's great.
I was going to add, basically, the upsetting or the hard thing really when it came to things like birthdays, Christmas time. The fact that on Christmas morning you'd wake up to your children and they really couldn't verbalise how excited they were. Whereas this year just gone, they woke up and the excitement in the voices when they were speaking was just an amazing experience to have compared to years gone by, where they wouldn't just wake up and they'd be excited, seeing no faces. There was no verbal communication at all. I wanted to indicate that.
I've been working with Chatterbug for 2 years now. We've found their service really valuable. They've been an additional support to our NHS service. They've been very flexible. They've gone over and above what I would expect from a speech and language therapy service in terms of what they can provide. If I've had a need within the language service, Chatterbug have actually gone and they've found programmes, things that would help support those needs and those gaps. Chatterbug have got to know the children that they work with, and then they have created individual programmes for each child that they've worked with. So it's not generic programmes, they've developed programmes that are tailor-made to children and to children's needs, because obviously at Bankside we've got generic speech language difficulties, but then we've also got lots of children with language barriers for different reasons. So they've looked at our community and they've developed things specifically for our community, for our children.
Okay, so hopefully you found that quite insightful, especially the testimonial from the parents who kind of talked about their journey with speech and language therapy, both from a parent's perspective and how they kind of viewed the assessment and therapy process, and how that sort of happened through play and observations, then from kind of setting targets, training staff, having those conversations, and then, like mum and dad said, having that progress to having 2 children who can verbally communicate, which is brilliant. So these are some of the upcoming training courses that we have. So Early Talk Boost, which is an evidence-based targeted intervention to support language development with early years children. And then we have a similar one, which is then for Key Stage 1 children, so children sort of around 6 to 7. Call for Semantics, which is a language intervention to support comprehension and expressive language with children with and without speech and language needs. Vocabulary training, so we have our own Chatterbug vocabulary program, and we run that to train staff to deliver within schools, to do it as a whole classroom approach or to do it in small groups, and that's to promote vocabulary development. And then we have training around how to support children with developmental language disorder. So you may come across schools or families have children diagnosed with DLD, but they're not sure of how that support can be implemented or what that support should look like within the classroom. So that's what that training's about. And then we have Introduction to a Communication Friendly Environment. So that training explores the principles behind what is a good communicative environment within education and how that can then enhance children's communication and talking and learning within the classroom as a result of having a communication friendly environment. So that's a kind of whistle-stop tour of what speech and language communication needs are, what is a speech language therapist, what does a speech language therapist do, and different kind of entry routes into speech language therapy and how you can kind of embark your career into speech and language therapy. Any questions your own or something that I might have talked upon, or you want me to recap? Feel free to unmute your mics. Any comments? Have you found it useful, or have you learnt something that you maybe?
That was hi. So it's hi there. It's Jess. Yeah, that was really useful. Thank you. It was really yeah.
Great.
Motivating. Thank you so much.
That's okay. Yeah, hopefully it's given you a bit more information about kind of the career before you go into it.
Definitely, yeah. It's made me more excited. I quite like how I didn't realise Chatterbug did their own kind of projects, alongside placements as well. So that's definitely something I'll keep my eye out for.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. On our website or social media, you'll be able to get more information about that.
Yeah, I think Halton's probably my nearest, with me being Chester way. So I think
okay,
not too far. Halton's too far. So
sometimes some of your projects are suitable for to do it virtually. So if you're not close, like you said, not to Halton or to our headquarters in Leeds, don't fret too much, because some of the projects are kind of accessible and are successful to do it virtually, to do it via telehealth.
Oh, that's
so the one that we had last year was 100% virtual. It was 100% telehealth.
Oh, brilliant! No, that's great.
So if there is something and you feel like the location might not work, don't see that as a barrier. Get in contact with us to see if it would be something that could work for you.
Oh, brilliant. No, that's great. Thank you.
No worries. What about yourself, Zoe or Joanne?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. It was really informative and gave me a bit more background. I knew quite a bit anyway, but it was good to have that real background of the profession and what you offer and everything. So that's great. Thank you.
Brilliant. No, you're most welcome. I'm glad it's helped.
I just wanted to ask, do
course.
you have many opportunities for the assistant roles? I'm just wondering if you had anything coming up, it might be something that I might be interested in for a year or so before I look at applying.
Yeah, so they are they're speech language therapy roles, or we've recently kind of called the role CAL, so it's a communication and language specialist, because we felt like at Chatterbug the SLTA's assistants probably do a little bit more. So again, keep an eye out on Indeed, the Chatterbug website, or on social media to see if we're going to have any more CALS vacancies coming up. Check the location as well, or if there's a mix of telehealth, but that will probably be around Halton and Leeds if there are any upcoming vacancies.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
That's okay. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. I'll just stop recording.